have a terrifying paranormal experience that happened to me about 15 years ago that we refer to as the Goat Man.
Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
But actually believe it to be some kind of demonic entity. My experience started when my best friend and her son moved into a new home close to where I lived. Our sons are close in age and we spent several days a week together so that we could play and have a cup of tea and some adult conversation to try and stay as sane as you can once you've had kids. She had mentioned a few times that she thought her place was haunted and I'd witnessed a few shadows and unexplained noises, but I'd put it down to my imagination due to things that she'd told me. Over time, it got more and more obvious and things would move, we would see shadows and feel the sofa cushions move as if someone had sat down next to us. She began to get more and more scared, and one day, when I was there, we heard an almighty crash in the other room. Her TV had been taken off the stand and placed on the floor, as far as the plug would reach. I say placed as if it had fallen. It would have been on its front, as this was before flat screen TVs were as common, a big booty telly. That was when we got on Google and found that Sage could remove spirits. Unfortunately, your podcast wasn't around, otherwise I could have nipped into Lidl and grabbed some parsley and been done with it. One night she called me. She was hysterical because she'd seen a dark figure that looked like a man in a long cloak in her son's room. So I told her to come and stay with me for a few days until we could figure out what else to do to get rid of the spirits. She decided to get it blessed by our local priest and went home a few days later. It seemed to have worked. However, strange things started happening in my house not long after she left. That's not on that. That is not on.
The entity's moved.
I had a cordless landline downstairs, but a corded one upstairs in the room that my friend and her son stayed in. If the one upstairs was taken off the cradle, the one downstairs would beep, and it started doing this multiple times a day. I'd go upstairs and it'd be off the cradle and placed neatly next to it. My son also started to show an aversion to that room and would cry and refuse to walk past if the door was open. I stopped putting the phone back on the cradle whenever it would bleep, and after a few minutes it would keep beeping again, meaning it had been put back. Around this time, my son began crying about the man in the attic and wouldn't walk under the hatch without me. I saged the house and told whatever was there it was not welcome, and boy, was that a mistake. Within weeks, my son would scream at night and the goat man from the attic had woken him up and wouldn't leave his room. When I asked him why he called him the goat man, he said that he looked like a man but he had horns like a goat. Things started to get worse over the next few months. My son's room would have drawers ripped open and clothes strewn about when we were both downstairs or not even in the house. His toys would be thrown down the stairs, my curtains were ripped down and my antique mirror was ripped off the wall. Me and my friend decided stupidly to try and communicate with it.
Oh no, Rachel, girl.
When we didn't have the children using EVP. I stood in my kitchen and asked, "Spirit, do you need my help?" All the cupboard doors flew open. I felt something touch the back of my neck, and when we played it back, all it said was, "I see you."
Oh no.
I told my friend, no, we need to stop. We turned off the static recording, closed all the cupboards and went for a cig. We came back in and my friend went into the kitchen and sat down. As I reached the kitchen door, I saw a figure out of the corner of my eye. So I turned towards it, expecting it to disappear as it always had done before, but instead it lurched towards me. So I ran backwards into the kitchen and whatever it was followed me, and it felt like it was choking me. I ended up pinned against the wall, unable to move and struggling to breathe, like someone had their hands around my neck. My friend suddenly screamed and it was gone. The whole thing was probably a few seconds from start to finish, but felt like minutes to me. I collapsed on the floor crying and my friend was screaming. She'd seen a dark figure follow me into the kitchen and stop in front of me when I was against the wall. She described the exact same figure as I'd seen, over 6 foot tall, completely black like a shadow but denser. Outline looked like a man in a cape with the hood pulled up and no face, except when it had stopped in front of me, she'd seen horns like a goat. I hadn't seen this. I called the priest that had blessed her home immediately, as we figured whatever had been in her home had followed her here, and unable to return to a blessed home had stayed at my house and was gaining strength from my fear as it had done at hers. The priest came out the next day and nothing else has happened in either of our homes since. Our boys thankfully have no memory of it all, but it still gives me shivers when I think about it. And although nothing has happened since my house was blessed, I refuse to go in the attic or have a house phone.
Let's read some more scary stories that were sent to us. This story happened 4 years ago to my sister and her husband, and it happened in Walnut Ridge, Arkansas. So one night they couldn't sleep, so they went on a drive. They were driving down back roads just talking and looking for animals, and they drove over a levee. After the levee, there was the woods, and at the tree closest to the road, they had just happened to both look over on the passenger side and they saw something. It was a long, skinny hand and half of a face looking at them. Then it slid back behind the tree. They both instantly got a weird feeling. My sister said she teared up a little. They both looked at each other, didn't say a word, and drove fast the whole way home. They didn't sleep that night, and they didn't tell anyone or even talk about it for 3 years. I think we all know what that was, okay? That's what we call around here a skiggly wiggly, if you know what I'm saying. I have 11 siblings, so including my parents, 14 of us went on holiday to the coast one year. We all shared a house, and I was 8 at the time. When we got to the house, there were snakes on the roof. The neighbors let them up there to sunbathe, and we just thought, all right, moving forward. There was a big room that my sister and I wanted to share, but 3 of my brothers got it. That night, my youngest brother who got the room stood up in his sleep and started speaking to the wall, yelling, "Go away, I want to go home, go away." Then he just laid down and continued sleeping. A couple days later, one of my older brothers was downstairs alone with his dog when his dog started barking at the locked door. He was home alone. The door handle started jiggling as if someone were trying to open it from the other side. His dog continued barking and my brother was terrified. Every night at this house, we all heard doors opening and closing on their own and footsteps. My sister also got really sick randomly. My sister also swears she saw a dead person just sitting in a car when we were down there. Once we went home and got away from that house, everything returned to normal. We all still remember this and swear this house was haunted. And that happened in Australia.
One of our creepy Storytime family members shared this story with me, and she said that anytime she has ever tried to tell anybody, nobody has believed her and they've made her feel so alone. Creepy story time. Now, this is a long one, so this is part 1. She said she'd like to remain anonymous, but she'll probably be checking the comments if you want to leave your input there. This story takes place a few years back when she was 16, just about to turn 17. She is 20 now. For the sake of the story, let's call her Natalie. Natalie had just started an ILS position, which if you don't know what that means, it's just somebody that works with people who have cognitive or physical disabilities. Natalie said that typically somebody at her age at the time would not have gotten a position like this, especially with the company it was for, but her mom worked at the office there and so did her mother's boyfriend. So she had a good word in, and she said she didn't even need to interview for the position. She said, so fast forward about a month and everything is going great. She absolutely loves her job. She adores all her clients. And one morning, one of her clients had to cancel the shift because of illness or something. So in order to keep her hours, she reported it and she was given another client for that day, someone she had never worked for before. Natalie read the specific documentation. For the story's sake, we'll call this girl Sarah. And she came to find out that Sarah has autism. So she arrives at Sarah's house, knocks on the door, and goes inside. She says that Sarah was very sweet, but she did note that something felt very off. She had matted hair, her clothes were stained and tattered, and she said there was a very strong smell of dead animal. So she said she nicely and briefly suggested that maybe they could work together to clean her up a little bit. And then she even went on to explain the importance of cleanliness so as to avoid sickness or infection. So Sarah just looks at Natalie dead in the face and says, "He won't let me." So Natalie's a little confused because nowhere on Sarah's documentation does it say that she lives with anybody. She is very independent and lives alone despite having autism. So Natalie asks Sarah, "What do you mean by that?" And Sarah just shrugs her shoulders. Natalie asks Sarah one more time, and Sarah just turns away from her and goes over and sits at the dining room table where there are some art supplies sitting there. So Sarah begins to draw, and Natalie stands up and walks across to go over to her in the dining room, and she said that when she passed the living room, she noticed a very tall, had to be about 6 foot, old-looking full-length mirror. She said she remembers these details about it, like streaks running down it and cracks around the upper edge, probably because she said it made her feel very unsettled. So Natalie says she sits down at this table and her back is directly facing the mirror. And when she turns around, she can see into the mirror. She sees her own reflection and she can also see a little bit into the living room. So they're sitting there in silence for a little, and then Natalie tries to strike up some kind of conversation, asking her basic questions like, what are you into? What are your hobbies? Sarah does not give her very much to go on. She answers her with a few one-word answers, and then the rest of the time she's just shrugging her shoulders again. Natalie totally understands that with autism, it's hard to socialize, especially with new people, so she just decides to let it be. So about 30 minutes have gone by, and Natalie is trying to come up with things to talk about, so she's complimenting her drawings. But again, Sarah didn't really say much. Then, all of a sudden, the temperature in the room dropped. She said it felt like all the windows were open on a cold winter day, and none of the windows were open. She asked Sarah, hey, do you want me to turn on the heat since it's so cold in here? And Sarah replied, I need it cold. Natalie was like, all right, and she left it at that. Then Natalie notices Sarah aggressively flips the page in her drawing book and starts scribbling down an image, and it starts to look like she's drawing a cross. Natalie almost wanted to ask her if she was religious, but she knew that would be inappropriate to ask, and she didn't want her to feel uncomfortable, so she just asked, what are you drawing? Sarah just smiled wide without looking up and just replied, it's a cross. But Natalie noticed that Sarah drew it upside down. So Natalie said, I think you might have it drawn the wrong way. See, like this. And she holds up her necklace that she was wearing of a cross. Sarah looks up and her face drops. And she just says, you shouldn't have that in here. Natalie asks, why not? And then she replies, he doesn't like it. And then she went back to drawing. So at this point, Natalie's getting pretty freaked out. And then she says the coldness in the room drops even more. It's just getting worse and worse. And she's starting to think, I brought a jacket with me. Did I bring it from the car? Did I put it in the living room? So she turns around to look into the mirror to see if she can kind of see it sitting in the living room. When she turns around and looks in the mirror, she sees her own reflection, and she says she can see Sarah's hand sticking out from behind her, still scribbling away on the paper. And then Natalie says all of a sudden she just got this overwhelming sense of dread, just this horrible feeling like something bad is going to happen. And she's still looking in the mirror, watching Sarah's hand scribble, and then all of a sudden she stops and just sits there still. Natalie is frozen in fear. She just has this intense feeling like somebody's watching her. She says in that moment, she also felt breath hit her on the back of the head, and it even fluttered her hair. She spun around so fast, and she was face to face with Sarah, so close Sarah's nose was almost touching hers. She swore that she was able to see everything in the mirror, and she would have seen if Sarah was getting up out of her seat to move close to her. Her hand was still on the table. She said she would not have had enough time to get that close to her without her seeing her move in the mirror. Natalie recoiled back and Sarah kept leaning forward. Natalie kind of put her hand on her chest and then tried to jokingly say, oh, you scared me. Sarah now leaned back a little bit and then just looked at her and gave her the biggest grin. And she said it looked super unusual, almost like it hurt. And then she looked up and past her, and immediately her face dropped, and she said, he doesn't like you. Okay, this is getting kind of long, so I'm going to make a part 2 and finish up the story. Keep an eye out.
Never get up to use the restroom at 3 in the morning. Why the fuck was this story on my FYP? I got these cute earrings at Spencer's, and at this point, Spencer's, you need to sponsor me. Or at the very least, send your girl some earrings. How cute are they though? There's like a little mirror. Like you could see my phone recording. I hate this story because I'm the type of person that wakes up like 2 times in the middle of the night to go to the restroom because I have to pee. So if you're like me, maybe don't listen to this story. Actually, yes, listen to the story because we need to be scared together. So Yasmin says that a few days ago, she woke up around 3 in the morning because she really needed to use the restroom. She explains that when she got up, there was like a really weird silence, like eerie silence, almost like if somebody was there or like something heavy was around. She says that she started walking very quietly towards the restroom so that she didn't wake anybody up. And when she got there, she closed the door and she locked it. As soon as she locks the door, she says that she hears what sounds like somebody walking very slowly towards the restroom door and whispering, Jocelyn. Says that she felt like her heart skip a beat and she did not recognize the voice and nobody else was awake in her house. And then she hears the voice again. Yoselin. Yoselin. Bitch, don't lie, my breath does not stink. She explains how she did not respond to the voice and in her head she just started praying over and over again. She says that when she finished the prayer, she felt an arm on her shoulder and that, oh my god, I have chills, and that voice again saying, Yoselin, you should have never gotten out of bed at this time. She says that ever since that night, she didn't see anybody. She went out the door, nobody was there, but she hasn't been able to sleep in peace since then. She tries to lie to herself and tell herself that maybe she was dreaming, maybe she was half asleep and she thought she heard something. However, even as she is writing this story down to send to the Spanish podcast, she explains that she feels like if somebody is watching her from the corner of her room. All I'm gonna say is if this thing decides to go to the restroom with me, that thing's gonna be the one scared. Just kidding, don't come to the restroom with me, oh my god. Anyways, what do you guys think?
Dominica has entered the chat. If you're from Dominica, here's a spooky story for you. You might not want to watch this one at night. Dominicans will tell you if the bush calls your name after dark, that's Maboya. And it follows you even when you leave the island. I am back with another spooky story. So we're gonna call the person who submitted the story Mani. So Mani says that my cousin Janelle swears this happened to her when she went back to Dominica last year. And honestly, the way she told it, I still get chills. So she was staying near a small village near the, I'm sorry if I butcher this, the Kalinago territory. The kind of place where the forest starts right behind your house and it gets dark fast. So one night around 9 p.m. Janelle steps outside to take a call. The signal was better near the back steps right where the forest begins. So Janelle's out there and halfway through talking, she heard her name. Janelle. And it sounded like a soft woman's voice. It actually sounded like her aunt calling her. Now Janelle is caught off guard. She's not superstitious, so she answers. She says, yeah? Suddenly the phone call cuts off. She goes inside and, well, her aunt is not even home. Then she heard it again. Janelle, come. And this time it sounds like the voice is coming from outside. Back out there thinking that maybe it is her aunt. Now this is a part of the story that made the hair on her neck stand up. Now Janelle is out there listening out and looking out for her aunt. She hears her name one more time. And this time Janelle is really paying attention to this voice. Yes, it sounds exactly like her aunt. However, it was more flat. It was as though someone was copying her aunt's tone but not the emotion. At this point, Janelle starts getting freaked out, so she backed up toward the house. For some reason, she felt this heavy drag, not physical, but like her attention was being pulled. Then she hears twigs snapping. And the weird thing is, it didn't sound like footsteps. More like something is gliding, but like breaking branches as it moves. And then she hears it again. Her aunt's voice once again. Come now, hurry. But the voice also wasn't matching the way that the sound should move, if that makes sense. And it stayed the same distance no matter how far back Janelle walked. So eventually Janelle backs up, goes inside and locks the door. This is where it gets worse. As soon as she stepped in, her aunt, the real aunt, walks inside the house. As the aunt was walking into the house, she heard Janelle talking. She asked her, who are you talking to? Janelle is like, oh, so it was her aunt. Her aunt just walked in the house and she was hearing her aunt calling her outside. She tells her aunt, yeah, you were calling me. So I went out there to see what you wanted. But as I was out there, like, I couldn't see you. And her aunt just shakes her head immediately. Her face looked drained. She told her, if someone is calling you from the bush after dark, that's Maboya. It's calling in the voice of people you trust. So the most that they could do is pray. They go to bed later that night around 2 a.m. Janelle woke up to the sound of knuckles just tapping on the wooden wall near the bed. It was like slow, deliberate taps. Janelle's too scared to move, so she's just laying there. And the tapping is moving around the room, from wall to wall. And yet again, she hears, Janelle, come outside. Come outside, how about that? I'm so sorry. The window wasn't open and the voice sounded close, like it was already inside the house. So Janelle screams out for her aunt. Aunt came in with blessed oil, prayed and sat with her until morning. And the creepiest part is, even after that night, for Janelle's entire stay, around 2 in the morning, she would hear whispering, either her name being called, tapping on her window. It's not just a voice, it's a presence. It didn't try to drag her away after that. It never attacked Janelle or showed itself. Janelle just felt watched the entire time until she left Dominica. Y'all got some spooky stories. Got mimicking spirits too out there. That's very spooky. If you have a spooky story that you want me to tell, feel free to DM it to me right here on TikTok or on Instagram. Oh, and check out my YouTube channel for longer, better, and spookier stories. Like I say at the end of every single video, I love you, my abducted humans, from your favorite Haitian homegirl.
Can we show them the older homestead?
Yeah, let's go. As you know.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Was that you?
Yeah, that's on either side.
They went to both.
Yeah.
Yeah, most terrifying legend that I ever heard was that of the Stick Indian. Now, the Stick Indian comes from the Northwest Native American tribes, and to them, they do not like to talk about this thing. But I heard one story that comes out of Washington State. There was this girl named Serena. Now, Serena and her 6 friends decided for her 18th birthday that they were going to go on this camping trip. So they headed out towards Mount Rainier to this spot that they'd camped several times before. They get there, they set up camp, and they start drinking. Well, it starts to get late, and they build this really big campfire. As they're sitting around the campfire, they begin to tell ghost stories. And one by one, each person goes and tells a story. Well, it gets to Serena. And Serena says, this is a story that my great-grandmother told me. It's an old Native American legend. Apparently, there were these things called the Stick Indians. Now, the Stick Indians were this normal tribe that lived peacefully amongst the other tribes. Until one year, they had this very bad winter. And there were no rabbits, no deers, nothing to hunt. So they began to starve. And they lost all this weight. Their skin, was pulling up against their bones. Their eyes sank into their face. They started to lose their hair. And all that would remain were these little strands of stringy, long black hair. Their nails and teeth began to break and crack. And their voice started to go hoarse and sounded very shrilly, almost like screams. Eventually, they got to the point where they became so hungry that it drove them insane. And this one particular day, they hear whistling coming from a nearby tribe. And in desperation, because of how hungry they were, they decided to go over to this tribe, and they end up eating the whole entire village. After they had done this, they got this taste for flesh, and it drove them even more mad. And it's said still to this day, they have this taste for flesh. And then all of a sudden, Serena goes silent. And she hears whistling. But she looks over and notices it's this one boy named Caleb who went with her. And she goes, Caleb, why would you whistle like that? You're not supposed to whistle in the woods. This is how you draw these things in. You're not supposed to do that. And Caleb goes, I don't believe any of that. That's a bunch of hocus pocus jazz, And he starts taunting her. So after this, they decide they're going to go and play hide and go seek in the woods. So they go off in different directions, and Serena goes her own way into the woods. And she finds this good hiding spot behind a bush next to this tree. And she's sitting there, waiting. She can hear them counting. And then, ready or not, here I come. And all of a sudden, she starts to hear what sounds like footsteps walking towards her. And then it gets very, very quiet. And she hears, and then a clapping sound. And right behind her was Caleb. And he goes, you thought I was a stick person, didn't you? And she goes, that was stupid. Why would you do that? You're not supposed to whistle in the woods. Stop doing that. And she said, right as she was talking to Caleb, she looks up, and there is this tall man that's skinny, with his skin, close to his bones. His eyes are sunken in. His nails and teeth are broken. He's covered in mud and dirt, and he's hunched over. And she said he just grabbed Caleb and started dragging him through the woods. So Serena is scared. She's terrified, but she knows she has to go after Caleb and help him. She runs in his direction where this thing is dragging him through the woods. Finally, this creature stops, and he just starts eating Caleb. And when he finishes eating on Caleb, he stops, and all of a sudden he turns his head, and he looks directly at Serena. He's got blood on his face. He's got what looks like pieces of flesh in his teeth. And he starts crawling towards Serena. And he gets within a couple inches of her, and he starts sniffing up her leg and up the side of her body. But then all of a sudden, he turns and just runs off into the woods. And as he's running away, all you hear is...
Scary story time while I reactivate this slime. Oh my gosh. I get my money's worth, so get yours. Yeah. It just looks like I put a whole bunch of glue all over the table, bro. Ghost in the Backyard edition. Like, So this happened when I was in elementary school. I was definitely a little kid, and I remember I was in my room at the time, and I was doing something with my sisters. I cannot remember, but I was at my dad's house, and I remember that room always gave me the heebie-jeebies at nighttime because it was just creepy. I don't know, but I loved being in it in the daytime because of the windows, right? The way this room was kind of set up was that I can see kind of half of the front yard and then the backyard, right? I can see that. Now, I remember minding my business with my siblings and then seeing a man walking along the sidewalks in front of the house. Now, this man kind of had his head down and he looked like he was minding his business. So I'm not thinking it's a big deal. Time goes on, my sisters go to their room, and I completely forgot that this man walked by, right? I'm chilling next to my window, and next thing you know, I see this same man that I seen earlier in my backyard walking around my dad's garden just in circles. He did it 2 or 3 times. I'm looking at this man, full on staring at him. He doesn't make eye contact with me once, and then I see him kind of walk in the direction where my window is to kind of hide behind our playhouse. When he ducked behind the playhouse, I ducked too. So I duck, and I'm kind of peeking over my bed through my window. I see him get up, make direct eye contact with my window, walk into this corner where this old tree was, and he's just there. He's out of my view. So I immediately run to my dad. I'm like, Dad, there's a creepy man in our backyard. You gotta get him. He's creepy. He was just in our backyard. So obviously concerned, he gets up, he goes to the backyard, he checks all the places where I tell him to check, and he's like, look, there's nobody back here. What are you on? There's no one back here. And I'm like, no, there is. He went behind this way, just tripping off of it. I know some people are gonna be like, okay, where's the scary part? This is not scary, y'all. To describe my old house and its backyard, we had this huge fence that you couldn't climb up unless you had some type of assistance. You needed assistance to climb this wall. So everybody's looking at me like I'm crazy because what are you talking about? There's nobody back here. And I'm just trying to explain myself, I promise I'm not crazy. I'm not making this up. I'm not gonna say they didn't believe me, but I feel like they definitely thought I was tripping. I remember in that same night, I seen this man standing by my bay window, and I was terrified, and I hardly ever slept in that room again. So that's the scary part, and no one believed me. And I know a lot of y'all don't believe my story times, but I couldn't make this up, y'all. That man was in my backyard, and I seen him. I can still remember every detail about this man to this day. Bye.
This is one of the scariest urban legends you will ever hear. If you're alone, by yourself, in the dark, just skip the video unless you want to be scared, unless you don't want to be able to sleep tonight. But that's on you. But for the spooky baddies who just love to be paranoid, this is the story of Tsukima Anna, one of Japan's most unsettling urban legends. She's known as the girl in the gap. You know how when you leave your closet a little bit cracked open, or you leave a cabinet door a little bit cracked open, or even under your bed? That's where she is, that's where she hides. Places that creep you out to look in most of the time. When it comes to Tsukima Anna, you must avoid looking in the cracks of your home. If you leave a cabinet door open, don't look in it. If you leave your door open, don't look in it. If your closet is cracked open, any slight way, don't look in it. This story started a long time ago when a boy was living in a 2-story apartment. He was on the 2nd floor, and he felt like something was watching him for a very long time after he moved in. He just always felt everywhere dark. It was just the cracks of everything, behind his dresser, under his bed. Every single time he left a door open or a cabinet open, he felt like something was watching him from it, and he didn't feel like he was going crazy at first until it just kept happening. And as weeks and months went on, he was like, there's just something off here. Something is watching me. He tried to avoid looking in the cracks in his home for a long long time until he just succumbed to the urge to just look. And when he did one day, he looked in the crack of his closet, and there he seen something that he would never forget. A pale woman with long black hair, almost resembling the Grudge, in a long white gown, and she was just staring at him, and it was a feeling that he would never be able to shake. The next time you leave a door open or accidentally leave a cabinet open, don't stare in it. She will attach herself to you, and then she will haunt you forever, and she'll follow you wherever you go. Even if you move, she'll be there. She will follow you home, hiding in your walls and haunting you for the rest of your life. Make sure you don't leave your closet open. Love you guys. Bye-bye.
There was this college student named Garrett. Now, Garrett was on summer break, and he was concerned about paying for his senior year of college. So he happened to stumble upon an ad in the newspaper that said, come to Alaska, make a bunch of money, and then go home. Well, it was an ad to go work at a cannery up in Alaska. So he decided, maybe that's a good idea. I'll go there for the summer, make enough money, and be able to pay for my senior year. So he boarded a plane to Washington, and then he hopped on a ferry to Anchorage, Alaska. Now, when he gets to this cannery, they have a spot where they have these rooms for these people working at the cannery to stay in. And he decided he would rather stay at this campground where it was also offered if you wanted to camp. You could camp there and live while you worked for the cannery. So he pitches his tent and everything, and he ends up making friends with a few of the guys that are going to work there at the factory. Every day, it was long and hard, and he couldn't get that smell of fish, off of him. But he managed to make it through the day, and he knew that this money was going to go for a good cause. Well, late at night, after they got out of work, he said they would all meet at the campground, and they would have like big fires, and basically have like a huge party. Well, he's at one of these parties, and everyone's drinking, having a good time. He all of a sudden, out of the corner of his eye, sees this really cute Native American girl, and he said something just seemed off about her because she didn't look like she was part of this group that worked at the factory. So he walked over to her and said, "Hi, I'm Garrett," and introduced himself. And she said, "My name is Susitna." And he said, "Do you work at that cannery?" And she said, "No, I just live around here." He said, "Oh, that's nice." And he said she was really quiet. She didn't say much. But she seemed very enamored with him and would follow him around that whole night while they were having a party. So every night, Susitna would show up to these parties, and they kind of got to know each other really well. And she, like I said, wouldn't say much, but she would just stare at Garrett. Well, towards the end of their work thing, these parties started to grow bigger and bigger and kind of out of control. And this particular night, they were having a big party. Everyone was pretty well intoxicated. And some of the guys that Garrett worked with, they started harassing this moose. When Susitna seen this, she just kind of gasped and, was very panicked. So Garrett tries to intervene, and he is basically beaten up by these guys. Fast forward later on in the night, he now finds this moose, and, it is in pretty bad shape. So he knew, I must, put it out of its misery. So he, takes the life of this moose. And he said the whole time when he did this, Susitna just stared at him. On his last day of work, they were in the cannery when one of the guys had an accident and actually cut his hand off. So they had to shut down the factory, and they were like, "That's it for the season. You guys can leave. Here's your pay." And so he knew he wasn't going to see Susitna anymore. So he asked her, "Well, I'll stay one more day, and maybe you can show me where you live." So he meets Susitna that next day, and she takes him far out into the wilderness. And he said, there was nothing around. He was expecting, some kind of village maybe, or a town, but they were just, in the middle of the woods. And she says, "Look, up there." And he looks up, and there's just this big mountain peak. And she said, "They call that the sleeping lady in my tribe, and they believe that one day she will awake." And she started to go on and tell him about this legend of the mountain, and he didn't really understand why, but he was kind of I'll listen to her. And after that, he said Susitna just kind of disappeared into the woods. So he managed to find his way back and gets a ride into town. He gets on a plane out of Anchorage and heads to Washington, and then heads back home. Well, many weeks had passed, and he was thinking about Susitna. And this one day, he gets a letter in the mail. And it just has his address, but it doesn't have a return address. When he opens the letter, it's simply one sentence. It said, "I'm coming for you. and then the name Sasitna.
This photo is of the Cincinnati crawler. It was taken by a family who caught him in their home in 1974, but he escaped shortly afterwards. So in 1974, the Johnson family in Cincinnati noticed a couple weird things happening in their home. The 14-year-old daughter, Claire, would complain about seeing glowing eyes outside of her window at night. And then one night, the youngest son, Timmy, was laying in bed in the dark when he felt the family dog jump up onto his bed. But when he went to go pet it, it was not the dog. It was the crawler, who police still believe was responsible for the disappearance of 4 other boys in the area. Some believe that he was an escaped convict, while others actually believe that he was the victim of human experiments happening in the area that may have been conducted by the family's dad. Claire snapped this photo of him before he escaped, but he was never found since.
What the fuck was that? Bro!
What's going on around you?
I don't know. I'm frozen. I am frozen.
Did the window
Sean.
break?
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
So this happened to my husband and I about 30 plus years ago. And maybe it's the Halloween spirit, but I'll go ahead and tell it. My first TikTok ever. We were watching a friend's beautiful Victorian outside of Doylestown, Pennsylvania. They were away for a week, and we were staying there, my husband and I. And we were watching the house primarily because they had this standard poodle, Bryn, who had a spinal injury, so she didn't have use of her hind end at all. And at night, she would get baby gated into the kitchen. We had a linoleum floor in case she had, accidents. But there was a baby gate in the hallway and one to this little sitting area. And we had gone to bed. We put the gates up and tucked her in and went to bed. And it was a spooky house unto itself. It was beautiful Victorian. And it happened to be a very stormy, rainy night, lightning and the whole thing, whole works. And in the middle of the night, the electric had gone out, the power had gone out, and it was crashing thunder and lightning. And I hear Bryn kind of howling downstairs and crying. And I wake my husband up, and he reaches for the flashlight, and we're going down the steps. And we get to the kitchen, and baby gates are up, and we shine the flashlight. No Bryn, nowhere. But she's crying, and we're like, where is this coming from? And on the other side of the baby gate, in the little sitting area, was the door to the basement, and it had one of those old slide locks, and the slide lock was locked. Baby gate up. This is on the other side of the baby gate. Different background. Family came in and it got really busy and noisy. So Brittany's crying. We can't find her. She is not in the kitchen area. And we realize she's crying from the basement. The door is on the other side of the baby gate that is locked. The basement door is one of those old paneled wood doors, again with the slide lock. It's in the bolted position. My husband hands me the flashlight. He unbolts the slides the door. I shine the flashlight down as he's going down the steps, and there she is at the bottom of the steps. Big eyes glowing in the flashlight light, staring up at us at the bottom of the basement steps. So he goes down and he gently scoops her up, walks up the steps, and we don't say a word to each other. I am absolutely freaked out. I can barely hold the flashlight. We put her on her dog bed, make sure the gates are secure. My husband shuts the basement door. We slide the little brass bolt over in the down position. We go back up to bed. I can't close my eyes. He is out in 2 minutes. I don't know, maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes goes by. It's still storming. We still don't have power. We hear Bryn crying again. He bolts right up. He sits right up. I said, oh my God.
We get the flashlight, we go down the steps, expecting something different. She is not in the kitchen. Baby gates are up. She is in the basement. We open the door, slide the bolt open, and there she is again at the bottom of the steps. Again, she cannot walk. She has no use of her hind end at all, and she's a big, big standard poodle. He scoops her back up. We go back, tuck her in, go back to bed. We're both not sleeping. Maybe a half hour goes by. She's howling again, and she's really howling. It was kind of it wasn't a whimper. It was really scared. I am literally holding on to the back of his shirt as we're going down the steps into the hall, knowing full well she is not going to be in the kitchen. It happened 3 times that night. That she was down the basement with the bolt slid shut. Many years later, we ran into, actually my husband ran into our friends, and it was, good 20 years later. And my husband said, "Hey, we've always wanted to talk to you about this, but is your house haunted?" And he said, "Oh my God, absolutely. We have jewelry and articles of clothing that go missing for months, and we come home and it's laid out on the bed." And many other things that they did not tell us when they asked us to babysit that house. So really, really unnerving night. A couple of things happened during that week to us personally, but it was really scary. And looking back now, we think, did that happen? Because it was so supernatural to be able to physically pick up a dog like that, knowing what it was doing or whatever it was, and knowing how it was going to affect us. I really think about it now, the psychological part of that, the intelligence of this particular haunt. It's a family favorite story that we've told our kids now that we have kids, and we share with friends that are like, "Mom, Dad, tell the story." And we both look at each other like, did this happen? And it did.
This is why you should not listen to your teacher. Once something terrifying happened to Sophia when she got to school. She went to class as usual when her teacher burst into the room and said, "Sophia, I have some bad news." She was shocked and embarrassed to be called out like that in front of her whole class. Her teacher then said, "Get your things. I just got off the phone with your father. He said your mom was in a horrible accident and he's gonna pick you up now and take you to the hospital." Sophia instantly froze in horror. She tried to explain, but her teacher kept interrupting her. "Why are you just standing around? Get your things now." But Sophia wouldn't move. She knew something wasn't right. She said, "I don't have a father. He passed away long ago and I never got to meet him. I was raised by a single mother all my life." To this day, Sophia still doesn't know who that man was claiming to be her father and what he planned to do if she had gone with him.
If mimic stories scare you, don't watch this. So the story starts when Angela's about 13 years old. Now, her grandmother had passed away in her house, and she always knew that it was haunted, but she didn't realize how bad it was until she was 14 years old. She said that her little sister and her dog would continuously look in the corner of the house, and that her little sister would say, "Nanny," every time she looked in the corner, and the dogs would just look in the corner and bark continuously. Well, she just kind of brushes these things off until one day she's homesick from school, and her mom and her dad are at work, and her sister is at school. She's just chilling, hanging out at her house when suddenly her phone rings, and she looks down at her phone and she realizes that it says that it's her great nan calling. So she answers the phone and she just hears this scratching sound like, and she's like, "What is that?" And then she hears this sharp scream, and then the phone line just cuts off. Now, she surprisingly ignores this, and she just goes back to watching her TV show. Could not be me. Here's where it gets unnerving. She's sitting there watching TV when she hears the front door open, and she hears her mom say, "Are you okay?" And she said that something just felt off about it. Her chest got heavy and her stomach just felt weird. She said something was telling her not to respond, but then she hears her mom call her name again. It's a little bit louder this time, and she's scared at this point. She said that, bear in mind, she was 14 years old. She had never been home alone, and so she was freaked out. Right as she's sitting there, scared out of her mind, her phone starts to ring, and the caller ID says it's her mom calling. And her mom says to her, "Are you okay?" Just like she had heard her say when she heard the door open. And then she just says, "I'm picking your siblings up from school." And at this point, Angela is just like, "Okay." Angela said she did not want to scare her mom, so she did not tell her mom what happened. Then it gets worse because this brave girl decides that she's going to go downstairs and she's going to try to find out what she heard. She can't find anything, so she's walking back up the stairs when suddenly something just tugs her hair back and she falls down the stairs. Now she starts screaming and crying, and as she's screaming and crying, she can still feel something tugging on her hair. And then just like that, she's out like a light. Next thing she remembers, her mom is waking her up, asking her again if she is okay. Now, the last thing she said in this email was, do you think this was my grandmother, or do you think that this was something else? And my opinion, personally, is absolutely not do I think this was your grandmother. In no way, shape, or form do I think that your grandmother would do that. Well, I don't know her, but do you think that she would do that? I mean, most grandmothers wouldn't. But unless she was like mean in life, I don't think that this was your grandmother at all, because this was scary. Whatever this was trying to terrify you. And honestly, like, I can't even say it. Let's put it this way, since I can't say it. Trying to cause you physical uncomfortability to a severe extent, if you catch my drift. My question is, were you hurt after this? After you fell down the stairs? Did that hurt you? Because I'm sure that did, right? And also, one thing that I find really interesting is that you heard your mom open the door and say, "Are you okay?" And then your mom ended up saying that to you twice. And the second time she said it to you after you fell down the stairs, which makes me think that that was kind of like a foreboding for what was about to happen to you, which I personally think is like the eeriest part of the story. But what do you guys think about this entire story? Do you think this was her grandmother? I mean, I guess we would have to have a little bit more information to really know that, but I don't think it was. And do you think that that was kind of a foreboding when her mom opened the door and said, "Are you okay?" And clearly that was not her mother. And what else do you guys think about the story? I would love to hear your thoughts, suggestions, and opinions in the comments, but as always, please be respectful.
There's something in my eye right now. Can you guys see it? Oh my god, look at, you can see me in my eye right now. That is so creepy.
And now we're gonna do my favorite part, which is the shout outs. What is wrong with my eye? Beth Ann Evan 0, you left a really nice comment underneath the video where I was upset, and I appreciate that so much. I just want to say thank you to every single one of you for the comments that you left. That comment section was filled with love, and it made me feel so much better. You have no idea. I felt so loved looking at all of those comments that were just, I can't even tell you. So thank you so much to everybody. But thank you, Beth Ann, for what you said. I truly appreciate that. It makes me feel so supported. And you have no idea how comforting that was at a time that I was so upset. So thank you for bringing me comfort like that. And thank you for supporting me and being here and just like watching my video. I was about to say show. Watching my videos. I appreciate you more than you know. And I love you, girl. Drink Hemlock Tea. You left such a nice comment. Thank you so much for what you said about my storytelling style and just about how I tell stories. And I cannot tell you how much that meant to me, what you said. So thank you, because that made me feel so much better. It made me believe that I can still make these stories scary, which I know that I can. I know that I can until we get to a point where I can do everything again, because there will be a point where I can do what I was doing before again. It will just take some time. But it really made me believe in myself more. So I really appreciate you doing that. It meant so much to me. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching my videos. And I can't show enough appreciation. So I love you. And guys, tell me what you want me to look up, because I also want to start searching things too, like paranormal stuff. So tell me what true paranormal things you would like me to look up and study, and then I can make a video out of it. So it can be a movie, it can be an urban legend, it can be, well, I guess urban legends aren't technically true, but some of them may be. It can be like something that happened, like a famous case, but let me know. Drop it in the comments and I will research it. But with that being said, my name is Kaisa and I tell true scary stories on here every single night that you guys submit to me. So if you're into that, hit that follow button, and I just need you to do 3 things for me. And what are those? Keep sending me your scary stories, have a safe night, and what's the third one? Say it with me. Have a spooky night. Love you guys so much. See you in the next one. Spooky kisses and haunted hugs.
This creepy Airbnb video went viral in the US after one girl shared what happened to her when she stayed there for just a couple of days. At first, nothing seemed off until she noticed her dog absolutely refused to go up the stairs to the 2nd floor. The dog would go about halfway up, then just freeze, like something was physically stopping it from going any further. So she decided to check the stairs. She pulled up the carpet, expecting to find something hidden there, but there was nothing. Still, what she discovered next turned out to be truly shocking. It turned out this Airbnb had a door that was completely locked, sealed so no one could get inside. And the creepiest part? You could clearly see light shining from underneath the door, like someone had left a light on in there. At first, the girl told herself it wasn't her business and tried to ignore it. But later that evening, she started hearing disturbing noises coming from behind that same door. That's when she decided to slide her phone under it, camera on, to see what was happening inside. At first, nothing looked strange. On the phone screen, you just see a plain room with a bare light bulb. But then, when she tried to push the phone a little farther in, it slipped out of her hand and, from the sound of it, started tumbling down a staircase. And that's when it gets truly terrifying. When the phone finally lands, a few seconds go by and then it looks like someone picks it up, holds it for a moment, and then drops it again.
Okay, so let me tell you guys the craziest experience I ever had. I just feel like I did like a full angle. Sorry, it's the craziest experience I ever had while working the night shift. So I used to work at Ross, Dress for Less, the worst place in the freaking world. Ross, don't sue me. But I worked the night shift. So we would get to work at like 3 o'clock in the morning. If it was like a late start day, maybe 4 o'clock. But at this point, I didn't drive. Thankfully, though, my dad also had to be to work pretty early in the morning, so he would just drop me off on his way to work. This didn't fare like super well for me, though, because there would be times that he would have to drop me off like 30 to 45 minutes before anyone else would get there. And this Ross was around like some other businesses, but nothing that anyone else would be showing up at this time for work. So this particular day, it's one of those times. He's dropping me off super early. I think it was literally like 40 minutes before anyone else showed up. So he drops me off at the light that's near the Ross. On the corner, I jump out of the car. I have to walk the rest of the way to work. Keep in mind, at 3 o'clock in the morning. So as I'm approaching the Ross, it's pretty dark because there's no lights on the inside until we get into the store. This shopping center doesn't even have any sort of like security or anything. So my plan was to find myself a bench that's right in front of the Ross and just sit there until somebody else got there. As I'm walking up to Ross, I start to see something and I realize that it's somebody already sitting on the bench. So I'm thinking, thank God one of my coworkers is already here. When I get closer, it's a kid and he's sitting there on the bench with his hood over his head. So I sort of instantly think, like, oh, he's probably homeless, like he's probably just resting there. So let me not bother him. So I probably stay like a good, I'm going to say like 50 feet away from him on the other side where the entrance is to like the Ross, because the bench was on closer to the next door over. So I'm just standing there kind of just scrolling through my phone, but this was like pre-social media, so I didn't really have anything to do on it. I was just like scrolling through apps. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I feel this person like looking at me and I could see them. Their hood is up and they're turned toward me. So the second I go to turn and look at them, they look away. And so I'm like thinking like, oh, I probably just like caught them staring at me, whatever. So I go back to my phone. Then they do it again and they're staring at me. And so I'm just trying not to like really pay that much attention because I'm starting to get a little bit nervous because again, I'm out here by myself. But I'm starting to notice that every single time I look away from this person, they turn their attention toward me. Then one of the times that they're staring at me, I turn to go look at them and they don't look away. Keep in mind, it is so dark though. I cannot make any features out about this person. I don't even know if it's like a boy or a girl. So when they're staring at me, I just kind of do the polite little like, but they do not reciprocate anything. They're just staring dead at me. So I'm starting to get scared because by no means was this like a big person, but I'm a small guy myself. So like if I have to fight this person in the middle of the night while I'm just trying to go to work, I don't know what I'm going to do. I figure at this point, like my manager is probably on her way to work anyways. So I go and I try to give her a call. She doesn't answer. So I leave a voicemail saying, hey, I don't really know what to do, but this person is sitting outside of the store and I feel super uncomfortable. What time are you going to get here? But obviously I couldn't do this in front of the person. So I walked away. By the time I came back, they were gone. Literally nowhere to be seen. And I was only gone for maybe 45 seconds. So then I have to just stand there for another 40 minutes while I wait for somebody else to show up. Thankfully, my manager, I think, came a little bit earlier, like maybe 10 minutes. So I was able to go into the store and it'd be fine. But you want to hear the craziest part? I tried to tell her to go and check the security footage. Like, 'cause I was like, I need you to see what this person looked like. Tell me why it just so happened to be that night, there is no security footage. We looked and looked and looked. Our cameras just weren't recording, which is unlike anything I had ever seen because those cameras were always recording. So many random things would happen in that parking lot and we'd be like, oh my God, let's go watch the security footage. Somehow it just wasn't recording for that very specific event. So I don't know who I ran into that night, but so many people that I told this story to think it might have been the black-eyed children. And I also kind of think that. So let me know in the comments what you think this was that night. And I will see you guys on the next story. Bye.